Welcome. Wherever you are listening from, perhaps in a quiet room, perhaps with the lights dimmed, perhaps letting the day slowly fall away, this is not a story about rockets or engineering diagrams or distant red planets. This is a story about something much older and much closer to us. It is about the belief that every journey has a way back. From the moment humans first began to move across the land, crossing rivers, climbing mountains, sailing beyond the horizon, we carried with us a quiet assumption that no matter how far we go, home remains behind us, waiting. That assumption is so deeply rooted that we rarely question it. It feels natural, it feels safe, and it has followed us all the way into space. For most of human history, exploration has been defined not by departure, but by return. The hunter leaves the village and comes back with food. The sailor crosses the sea and eventually finds shore again. Even the most dangerous expeditions across polar ice, into dense jungles, across featureless deserts, were planned around the same expectation. Survival meant coming back. The stories we tell ourselves reinforce this pattern. The hero ventures out, faces the unknown, and returns changed but alive, carrying knowledge home. We celebrate return as proof of success. And because this pattern has repeated itself for tens of thousands of years, it feels universal, almost unbreakable. Space challenges that belief in ways that are difficult to fully understand. At first, it does not appear to. Early spaceflight fit neatly into our old narrative. Astronauts launched, orbited Earth, and returned safely to the ground. The Moon followed the same pattern. Humans left Earth, traveled farther than ever before, planted flags, collected samples, and came home. The story remained intact. Distance increased, technology improved, but the assumption held: exploration ends with return. And because Mars still feels like an extension of this progression, a little farther, a little harder, it is easy to assume that journeys beyond Mars are simply the next step, scaled up but fundamentally similar. This is where the illusion begins. Beyond Mars, space stops behaving like a place humans can casually pass through. The comforting framework that has guided every journey in human history begins to dissolve, not dramatically, but quietly. There is no visible border, no signpost that says you are crossing into a different category of existence. Instead, the shift happens through accumulation, distance layering upon distance, risk stacking on top of risk, systems becoming less forgiving, time stretching in ways the human mind struggles to grasp. And somewhere along that gradual transition, the idea of coming back stops being a realistic plan and becomes something closer to a comforting story we tell ourselves. The illusion of return persists because it is emotionally necessary. Without it, exploration becomes something else entirely. It becomes separation. It becomes departure without reunion. Humans are not wired to think comfortably in those terms. Even when we imagine permanent settlement colonies on distant worlds, we frame them as extensions of Earth, connected by trade, communication, and shared identity. We imagine future ships traveling back and forth, families reunited across planets, civilizations expanding outward while remaining whole. These images feel hopeful, reassuring, and familiar. But they are built on assumptions that may not survive contact with physical reality. One of the reasons the illusion is so powerful is that space, from a distance, looks empty and calm. The images we see are silent and beautiful stars hanging motionless against blackness, planets drifting peacefully in orbit. There is no visual indication of hostility, no storms, no predators, no obvious danger. But this calm is deceptive. Space is not empty in the way an open field is empty. It is empty in a way that actively erases life. It does not simply lack what we need. It strips it away. Heat bleeds out. Air disperses instantly. Radiation passes through flesh without resistance. Time itself becomes an adversary, as distances stretch far beyond the scale of human intuition. On Earth, even the most remote environments are still embedded in a living system. There is gravity that holds us down, an atmosphere that cushions temperature swings, magnetic fields that shield us from cosmic radiation, ecosystems that recycle air and water whether we notice them or not. When we travel across Earth, we never truly leave this protective envelope. Even Antarctica, even the deep ocean, even the highest mountains exist within Earth's life support system. Space does not offer this background support. Every function required to keep a human alive must be carried, maintained, repaired, and defended against failure. And every kilometer traveled away from Earth makes that task exponentially harder. The assumption of return relies on redundancy and rescue. On Earth, if something goes wrong, help can come. Another ship can be sent. Another team can follow. Even in the most isolated regions, rescue remains theoretically possible. Beyond Mars, rescue becomes a concept rather than an option. Distances are not measured in hours or days, but in months and years. Communication is delayed. Trajectories cannot be easily altered. Fuel cannot be conjured after launch. Every decision made before departure becomes increasingly permanent with time. The farther you go, the more the future collapses into the past. Psychologically, humans struggle with this permanence. We are planners, but only within limits. We plan for contingencies we can imagine and respond to. We are less comfortable with situations where no response exists. This discomfort often leads us to blur the line between possibility and plausibility. It is possible, in theory, to imagine advanced propulsion systems, perfect shielding, self-repairing habitats, and closed-loop life support systems that function indefinitely. These ideas are not fantasies in the strict sense. They are grounded in real scientific principles. But possibility alone does not make them reliable, and reliability is the currency of survival. The illusion of return is reinforced by language. We speak of missions, voyages, and exploration, words that imply structure and conclusion. We rarely speak of abandonment, isolation, or irreversible separation. Even when discussing one-way missions, we soften the framing with promises of legacy, contribution, and purpose. These narratives are not lies, but they are selective truths. They emphasize meaning while downplaying consequence. They allow us to imagine departure without fully confronting what it means to never physically reconnect with the place that shaped us. Beyond Mars, Earth ceases to function as a backup system. It becomes a memory, a signal delayed by minutes that slowly stretch into silence. This shift is not immediate, and that is what makes it dangerous. The transition from reachable to unreachable happens gradually enough that optimism can survive longer than realism. Each successful test, each technological milestone reinforces confidence, but confidence is not the same as safety, and history is filled with examples where confidence masked fragility. There is also a deeper reason the illusion persists. Return defines identity. Humans measure life in cycles: departure and arrival, loss and recovery, sleep and waking. The idea of a journey without return disrupts this rhythm. It suggests a life that unfolds entirely away from its point of origin, without the possibility of reconciliation. This is not merely a logistical challenge, it is an existential one. It forces us to confront the idea that exploration may require letting go of the very frameworks that made exploration meaningful in the first place. When we imagine traveling beyond Mars, we often focus on destinations, asteroids, moons, distant worlds. We picture surfaces, resources, scientific discoveries. But the most important transformation happens long before arrival. It happens when Earth shifts from being a place you can reach to a place you can only remember. That moment is subtle. It does not announce itself with alarms or ceremonies. It arrives quietly, carried on increasing delays, narrowing options, and the realization that certain failures can no longer be undone. This is why the idea of return beyond Mars is not simply uncertain, it is structurally incompatible with the environment. The systems that support return become heavier, more complex, more fragile as distance increases. Each layer added to preserve the possibility of coming back introduces new points of failure. Eventually, the effort required to guarantee return outweighs the capacity of any realistic mission architecture. At that point, return stops being a plan and becomes a hope. Hope is powerful, but it is not a strategy. In the chapters that follow, we will move slowly and deliberately through the reasons this illusion breaks down, not through spectacle or fear, but through accumulation. Physics, biology, psychology, economics, and time itself all play a role. No single factor seals the outcome. It is the convergence that matters. Beyond Mars, the universe does not forbid return outright. It simply removes the margins that make return survivable. And without margins, human life becomes a temporary condition rather than a sustainable one. This is not a condemnation of exploration. It is an acknowledgement of its true cost. To travel beyond Mars is not just to go farther than ever before, it is to cross a threshold where the meaning of journey changes, where leaving is no longer balanced by coming back, where exploration begins to resemble exile, not because of malice or failure, but because of the quiet, indifferent structure of the cosmos itself. As we continue, keep this thought gently in mind. The most dangerous assumption humans carry into deep space is not that something will go wrong. It is that, somehow, we will always find a way back, where beyond Mars actually begins. When people hear the phrase beyond Mars, they often imagine a simple extension of familiar space travel, as though Mars were merely a milestone along a longer road, and everything past it simply more of the same. In this way of thinking, distance is linear, difficulty increases gradually, and progress feels inevitable. But space does not operate on intuition, and the boundary we casually describe as beyond Mars is not a line on a map. It is a transition zone, one defined not by location alone, but by the collapse of safety margins that quietly protect human life closer to Earth. Mars itself occupies a unique position in human imagination and engineering. It is far enough away to feel like a true planetary journey, yet close enough to remain partially tethered to Earth. Communication delays are manageable. Launch windows recur predictably. Rescue, while extremely difficult, remains theoretically conceivable. Mars exists at the outer edge of what can still be framed as a round trip, even if only on paper. But the moment a spacecraft continues onward, past Mars's orbit, past its gravitational influence, past its role as a logistical waypoint, the character of space travel changes fundamentally. This change is not dramatic. There is no sudden increase in speed, no visible wall, no warning signal. Instead, it reveals itself through subtraction. Gravity becomes weaker and less useful. Planetary flybys become rarer. Solar energy thins. Navigation grows less forgiving. Every system aboard the spacecraft begins operating closer to its absolute limits, with fewer external resources available to compensate for error or failure. In this region, space stops being an environment humans pass through and becomes an environment they must survive continuously, without interruption, for years at a time. One way to understand this boundary is through the concept of gravitational safety nets. Near Earth, gravity is abundant and cooperative. It allows spacecraft to orbit, rendezvous, dock, and return with relative efficiency. The Moon still shares Earth's gravitational neighborhood. Mars, while independent, remains close enough that its gravity can assist with braking, landing, and eventual departure. Beyond Mars, gravity becomes sparse and scattered. Objects large enough to offer meaningful gravitational assistance, planets, and large moons, are separated by vast distances and inconvenient alignments. Miss one opportunity, and the next may not come for years. Another defining feature of this boundary is time. Travel times beyond Mars stretch beyond human operational norms. Missions are no longer measured in months, but in years and decades. This has profound implications. Hardware ages, materials fatigue, software becomes obsolete, human bodies degrade, psychological strain accumulates, and crucially, the ability to correct mistakes diminishes with every passing day. A decision made early in the journey may not reveal its consequences until it is far too late to reverse. Radiation exposure also crosses a critical threshold. Within Earth's magnetic field, and even within Mars's partial influence, radiation is mitigated to some extent. Beyond Mars, that shielding fades. Cosmic radiation becomes a constant, unfiltered presence. Solar storms arrive with little warning and no natural barrier to soften their impact. Over time, radiation damage accumulates silently, altering cells, increasing cancer risk, impairing cognition, and weakening the body's ability to repair itself. Unlike mechanical failures, radiation damage cannot be fixed with spare parts or clever engineering. It is cumulative and irreversible. Then there is communication. Near Earth and Mars, delays are noticeable but tolerable. Conversations still feel connected. Instructions can be clarified. Emergencies can be discussed. Beyond Mars, communication delays stretch into tens of minutes, then hours. Dialogue turns into correspondence. Real-time guidance disappears. Crews become fully autonomous, not because it is desirable, but because there is no alternative. When something goes wrong, the people who design the systems are too far away in time, as well as space, to help meaningfully. Responsibility becomes absolute. Energy, too, begins to behave differently. Solar power, which supports most current spacecraft, weakens as distance from the sun increases. Panels must grow larger, heavier, and more vulnerable to damage to compensate. Nuclear power becomes an option, but it introduces new risks, limitations, and ethical concerns. Energy shortages are not merely inconveniences. They cascade into life support failures, thermal instability, and system shutdowns that can turn fatal quickly. Beyond Mars, there is no environment to buffer these fluctuations. Energy miscalculations are paid for immediately. Navigation in deep space also loses its margin for error. Near Earth, tracking systems are precise, corrections are frequent, and reference points are plentiful. Beyond Mars, small deviations accumulate over long distances. Course corrections require fuel, and fuel is finite. Every adjustment consumes mass that cannot be replaced. Eventually, navigation becomes a balance between precision and conservation, where correcting one problem risks creating another. The farther the journey extends, the more unforgiving this balance becomes. It is tempting to imagine that advanced technology will erase these constraints. Faster propulsion, smarter computers, better materials, all of these will help to a degree, but they do not remove the underlying structure of the problem. Distance still multiplies risk. Time still degrades systems. Radiation still penetrates shielding. Human biology still evolved under Earth's protective envelope. Technology can push the boundary outward, but it cannot eliminate it. Beyond Mars is not defined by how far we can go, but by how long we can remain functional without Earth's invisible support. There is also a cultural misconception at play. We often treat space as a continuous frontier, like land exploration once was on Earth. But Earth's frontiers were embedded in the same planetary system. Even the most distant lands shared air, gravity, and biological compatibility. Space is not a new continent. It is a fundamentally different domain. Beyond Mars marks the point where this difference becomes dominant rather than manageable. It is where Earth stops being a foundation and becomes a distant reference. For future travelers, this boundary will not be announced. There will be no moment where a captain declares that return is no longer possible. Instead, it will arrive quietly, revealed through calculations, probabilities, and contingency plans that gradually shrink until they vanish. Engineers will still draw return trajectories, but with more assumptions and fewer guarantees. Planners will still speak of rescue options, but with longer timelines and thinner margins. The language of possibility will persist even as the reality of irreversibility takes shape. Understanding where Beyond Mars truly begins is essential, because it reframes the entire conversation about deep space travel. It is not about bravery, or ambition, or vision. It is about thresholds, about points where familiar rules stop applying, about environments where survival depends not on strength or skill alone, but on the absence of failure across spans of time that human systems have never reliably endured. The physics that quietly ends return. At first glance, the physics of space travel seems straightforward. Rockets fire, spacecraft accelerate, trajectories are calculated, destinations are reached. From a distance, motion through space looks clean and elegant, governed by predictable laws. But beneath this apparent simplicity lies a quiet tyranny, one that does not announce itself with drama or danger, but instead accumulates relentlessly, accounting for every movement, every correction, every hope of turning back. This is the physics that governs return, and it is far less forgiving than intuition suggests. Every journey through space is a negotiation with velocity. To leave a planet, a spacecraft must accelerate enough to escape gravity. To arrive somewhere else, it must slow down. And to return, it must repeat the process in reverse. Each step demands energy, and energy in space travel is inseparable from mass. Fuel is not just something you burn, it is something you must carry, protect, and accelerate, along with everything else. This creates a compounding problem. The more fuel you need, the heavier you become, and the heavier you become, the more fuel you need. Near Earth, this problem is softened by proximity and infrastructure. Launch vehicles are staged, orbits are well understood. Refueling, at least in theory, can occur. Mars, while distant, still sits within a range where mission planners can construct return scenarios that balance fuel, mass, and time. The margins are thin, but they exist. Beyond Mars, those margins erode rapidly. The fuel required to guarantee a return begins to outweigh what any realistic spacecraft can carry without sacrificing safety, shielding, or life support capacity. This constraint is governed by a principle known to engineers as the rocket equation, a relationship so fundamental that it quietly dictates the shape of every spacecraft ever built. It reveals an uncomfortable truth. Small increases in required velocity demand exponentially larger amounts of fuel. There is no technological cleverness that escapes this relationship. Materials can improve, engines can become more efficient, but the curve remains. As distances increase and trajectories grow more complex, the cost of preserving the option to return grows faster than intuition expects. Beyond Mars, trajectories are no longer simple arcs between 2 points. They become intricate dances through moving gravitational fields, timed precisely to planetary alignments that may occur only once every few years or decades. Missing a window does not mean waiting a little longer. It can mean waiting so long that systems degrade, supplies run low, or crew health declines beyond recovery. Fuel reserves intended for emergencies are consumed by course corrections. Contingency plans shrink until they exist only on paper. Turning around in deep space is also far more complex than reversing direction. Spacecraft are not cars that can simply rotate and accelerate back the way they came. Their paths are governed by momentum and orbital mechanics. Changing course requires fuel, and fuel spent turning back is fuel no longer available for life support, shielding, or future corrections. The farther a spacecraft travels, the more its return trajectory diverges from its outbound path, demanding even more energy to realign. There is a subtle psychological trap here. Humans tend to think in symmetrical terms. If you can go out, you can come back. But space travel is asymmetrical. Departure benefits from launch infrastructure, planetary gravity assists, and carefully staged propulsion. Return requires all of that to be recreated in reverse, without the support of a home planet waiting beneath you. Beyond Mars, there is no Earth equivalent to catch you, slow you, and welcome you back. There is only more space. Fuel is not the only mass that complicates return. Shielding against radiation, structural reinforcement against micrometeoroids, redundancy in life support systems, all of these add weight. Every kilogram devoted to keeping humans alive is a kilogram not available for propulsion. Beyond Mars, mission designers face a cruel trade-off. Protect the crew better and reduce the chance of return, or preserve fuel for return and expose the crew to greater risk along the way. There is no configuration that optimizes both indefinitely. Even if fuel constraints could somehow be overcome, time introduces another layer of difficulty. Long-duration missions mean engines must remain reliable for years without maintenance. Valves must not seize. Tanks must not leak. Ignition systems must function perfectly long after launch in an environment of vacuum, radiation, and extreme temperature cycles. The probability of flawless performance decreases with time, not because of incompetence, but because complexity itself is fragile. In popular imagination, advanced propulsion systems often appear as solutions to this dilemma. Concepts like nuclear thermal engines, ion drives, or even speculative fusion systems promise higher efficiency and longer endurance. These technologies do offer improvements, but they do not erase the fundamental asymmetry of deep space travel. Higher efficiency reduces fuel mass, but it does not eliminate the need for it. Longer endurance extends mission timelines, but it also increases exposure to radiation and system fatigue. Each solution solves one problem while intensifying another. The physics of return does not fail suddenly. It fails gradually, through narrowing options. At first, return trajectories exist, but are expensive. Then they exist only under ideal conditions. Then they require assumptions that cannot be guaranteed. Finally, they exist only as theoretical possibilities, disconnected from practical reality. At no point does the universe forbid return outright. It simply makes it increasingly unlikely that all necessary conditions will align at the same time. Beyond Mars, the decision to preserve return capability becomes a philosophical one as much as an engineering one. How much mass are you willing to devote to a possibility that may never be used? How many risks are you willing to accept elsewhere to keep that option alive? At some point, mission planners must choose between committing fully to survival where they are, or carrying the weight of a return that may never occur. This choice is rarely framed openly, but it shapes every design decision in deep space architecture. The quiet power of physics lies in its indifference. It does not respond to courage, ambition, or intention. It responds only to energy, mass, and time. Beyond Mars, these variables align in ways that steadily erode the feasibility of return, not through catastrophe, but through arithmetic. A few meters per second here, a few kilograms there, a missed window, a delayed maneuver. Each small compromise adds up until the option to go back fades not with a dramatic failure, but with a calm acknowledgement. There is no longer enough left to make it happen. The tyranny of distance. Distance is one of the most familiar concepts in human experience, yet it is also one of the most deceptive. On Earth, distance is something we learn to negotiate early in life. A long walk becomes manageable with rest. A long journey becomes tolerable with planning. No matter how far we travel, the world remains connected by roads, oceans, and signals that move almost instantly. Space invites us to apply the same intuition, to imagine distance as something that can be steadily conquered. Beyond Mars, that intuition begins to fail. In deep space, distance is not just a measure of separation, it is a force that reshapes time, communication, and human relevance. Every additional kilometer adds delay, not only in travel, but in understanding. Messages that once arrived in moments stretch into minutes, then hours. Conversations dissolve into monologues. Questions are answered long after the context that gave rise to them has changed. The sense of being supported by a larger system fades, replaced by a growing awareness that the crew exists alone within an expanding bubble of silence. This delay has practical consequences that are often underestimated. Near Earth, ground control functions as an extension of the spacecraft. Engineers monitor systems continuously, catch anomalies early, and guide crews through complex procedures. Beyond Mars, this partnership fractures. By the time a problem is detected on Earth, conditions on the spacecraft may already have evolved. Instructions arrive too late. Decisions must be made without consensus, without external verification, and sometimes without full understanding of the consequences. Authority shifts entirely to the people aboard, not because they are best equipped to handle every problem, but because they are the only ones present. Distance also weakens rescue in a more fundamental way. On Earth, rescue is limited by speed and access, but it remains conceptually possible. In space beyond Mars, rescue is limited by physics. Even if a rescue mission were launched the moment an emergency was reported, it would arrive months or years later. By then, consumables would be depleted, systems would have failed, or the situation would have resolved itself in the only way available. Rescue becomes a comforting idea rather than an actionable plan. The tyranny of distance extends to navigation and perception. As spacecraft move farther from Earth, tracking becomes less precise. Signals weaken, reference points shift, small uncertainties grow over time. Corrections that would be trivial near Earth become costly and risky. A minor navigational error can propagate over millions of kilometers, turning a manageable deviation into a mission-altering problem. Distance amplifies mistakes, not because they are larger, but because they are allowed to persist longer before detection. There is also an emotional dimension to distance that is difficult to quantify. Humans evolved in environments where separation was temporary. Even exile implied the possibility of return. Beyond Mars, separation becomes indefinite. Birthdays, deaths, cultural events, and shared experiences unfold on Earth without the traveler's participation. Time diverges. The life of the mission becomes increasingly disconnected from the life of humanity as a whole. This separation is not marked by a single moment, but by a gradual thinning of relevance, as the traveler's world narrows to the interior of a spacecraft and the rhythms of survival. Distance reshapes priorities. Immediate concerns, air, water, power, crowd out long-term ambitions. The future becomes something to endure rather than plan. Even scientific goals may lose urgency in the face of maintenance, repairs, and the daily labor of staying alive. The farther from Earth a mission travels, the more its success depends on routine rather than discovery. Survival becomes the primary achievement. This narrowing effect also influences how missions are perceived back on Earth. Attention is finite. As distance increases and communication slows, public interest wanes, funding shifts, political priorities change. The mission, once a symbol of collective ambition, becomes a line item in a budget or a distant headline. Support systems erode not because of failure, but because of distraction. Distance does not just separate bodies, it separates attention. Beyond Mars, the combined effects of distance create an environment where return is not actively prevented, but passively abandoned. The resources required to maintain the option to come back, fuel, time, planning, political will, compete with the resources needed to survive where you are. Gradually, often without explicit acknowledgement, survival takes precedence. The mission adapts to permanence, not because it was planned that way, but because distance makes every alternative less viable. In this sense, distance is not merely an obstacle to be overcome. It is a filter that strips away assumptions. It reveals which systems can operate independently and which rely on constant support. It exposes the limits of coordination, empathy, and shared purpose across vast separations. And it forces a reevaluation of what it means to belong to a place when that place is no longer within reach. As the journey continues outward, distance transforms Earth from a destination into a memory. Not a lost memory, but one that grows increasingly abstract, increasingly symbolic. Earth becomes something that exists in photographs, recordings, and delayed signals rather than in immediate experience. The idea of returning begins to feel less urgent, not because it is impossible, but because the life being lived has already adapted to its absence. Radiation, the invisible countdown. Radiation is one of the most misunderstood dangers of deep space, not because it is rare or unpredictable, but because it is almost impossible to feel while it is happening. It does not announce itself with heat or pressure or sound. It does not tear metal apart or shake a spacecraft. Instead, it passes silently through walls, through tissue, through bone, leaving damage behind without immediate evidence. Beyond Mars, radiation becomes a constant companion, unavoidable, cumulative, and patient. On Earth, life exists inside a protective cocoon. The planet's magnetic field bends charged particles away. The atmosphere absorbs much of what remains. Even at high altitudes, radiation exposure is relatively modest and temporary. Humans evolved inside this shield, and our biology assumes its presence. Cells repair themselves based on exposure levels that remain within certain bounds. Beyond Mars, those bounds are exceeded not through a single catastrophic event, but through relentless accumulation. There are two primary sources of radiation in deep space. The first is cosmic radiation, high-energy particles that originate from distant supernovae and galactic events. These particles travel at near-light speeds and carry enormous energy. They are rare, but when they strike hard, slicing through cells and damaging DNA in ways that are difficult for the body to repair. The second source is solar radiation, particularly solar particle events triggered by eruptions on the Sunday. These are more frequent, more intense, and sometimes arrive with little warning. Closer to Earth, these dangers are softened. Astronauts aboard the International Space Station receive higher radiation doses than people on the ground, but still within limits, considered manageable for limited durations. Mars, while more exposed, can still be partially shielded by mission duration constraints and careful timing. Beyond Mars, exposure becomes continuous and unavoidable. There is no natural magnetic field to deflect incoming particles. Shielding must be carried aboard the spacecraft, and shielding is heavy. This creates a familiar trade-off. Thick shielding reduces radiation exposure, but increases mass. Increased mass requires more fuel. More fuel increases complexity and risk. At some point, shielding becomes impractical beyond a certain thickness. Designers must accept a level of exposure that is not safe in the traditional sense, but survivable for a time. That time becomes the countdown. Radiation does not kill quickly. It works slowly, quietly altering biological processes. Cells accumulate mutations. Cancer risk rises steadily. the immune system weakens. The nervous system becomes more vulnerable. Cognitive performance degrades in subtle ways: slower reaction times, impaired memory, reduced problem-solving ability. These changes are not dramatic enough to trigger immediate alarms, but they erode performance over years. In deep space, where autonomy is essential, even small cognitive impairments can have cascading consequences. One of the most troubling aspects of radiation exposure is its unpredictability. While average doses can be estimated, individual responses vary. Some people repair DNA damage more efficiently than others. Some tissues are more sensitive. The brain, in particular, appears vulnerable to certain forms of radiation that can disrupt neural pathways. Animal studies suggest that prolonged exposure to cosmic radiation may accelerate neurodegeneration, impair decision-making, and alter behavior. These effects are especially concerning in missions where crews must operate complex systems without external support. Solar radiation introduces an additional layer of risk. Solar particle events can deliver intense bursts of radiation over short periods. Spacecraft can be designed with storm shelters, areas with additional shielding where crews can retreat temporarily, but these shelters are limited in effectiveness and duration. If a solar event lasts longer than expected, or if shielding is insufficient, exposure accumulates rapidly. Beyond Mars, the warning time for such events may be reduced, further narrowing response options. Radiation also affects spacecraft systems. High-energy particles can damage electronics, corrupt data, and degrade sensors. Redundancy can mitigate these risks, but redundancy adds mass and complexity. Over long durations, even redundant systems experience cumulative degradation. Repairs become more difficult as spare parts are consumed and tools wear out. Eventually, radiation becomes a factor not just in human health, but in the reliability of the entire mission architecture. Unlike mechanical failures, radiation damage cannot be reversed. You cannot replace irradiated tissue or repair mutated DNA. Medical interventions can treat symptoms, but they cannot undo exposure. This makes radiation a uniquely unforgiving threat. Each day spent beyond Mars is a day where damage accumulates, regardless of how well everything else is functioning. There is no pause button, no safe harbor where exposure drops to zero. This reality challenges the concept of return in a profound way. Even if a spacecraft could physically make the journey back to Earth, the people aboard may not be the same. Increased cancer risk may manifest years later. Cognitive impairments may persist. Immune dysfunction may complicate recovery. Return becomes not a restoration, but a transition into a body permanently altered by exposure to an environment humans were never meant to inhabit. The psychological impact of knowing this cannot be ignored. Living under a constant, invisible threat changes how people think and behave. Stress levels rise. Risk tolerance shifts. Long-term planning becomes abstract when the future feels biologically uncertain. The knowledge that every day adds irreversible damage can quietly erode morale, even in highly trained crews. Beyond Mars, optimism must coexist with acceptance in ways that are difficult to sustain. Technological solutions are often proposed: advanced materials, active shielding using magnetic fields, pharmaceutical countermeasures to reduce cellular damage. These approaches are promising and research continues, but none of them eliminate the fundamental issue. Radiation exposure increases with time and distance. Mitigation reduces risk. It does not erase it. And in missions measured in decades rather than months, reduced risk still accumulates into significant consequence. Radiation also interacts with other stressors in complex ways. Microgravity weakens bones and muscles, making the body less resilient. Isolation affects mental health, reducing cognitive reserves. Limited medical capability restricts treatment options. Each factor alone might be manageable. Together, They form a web of vulnerability that tightens with time. Beyond Mars, survival becomes a matter of enduring overlapping stresses without a single catastrophic failure. There is an irony here. Radiation is often discussed as one of the great unknowns of deep space, yet it is one of the most predictable dangers. We know it is there. We know what it does. We know we cannot avoid it entirely, and yet we proceed, comforted by averages and projections, knowing that individual outcomes will vary. In this way, radiation becomes a quiet test of how much uncertainty humans are willing to accept in pursuit of exploration. The invisible nature of radiation makes it easy to underestimate. There are no alarms when DNA strands break, no immediate pain when neural pathways are altered. The damage reveals itself later, sometimes long after the mission has ended, if it ends at all. Beyond Mars, this delayed consequence blurs the line between mission risk and life risk. The journey does not end when the spacecraft stops moving. It continues in the body. As the countdown progresses, return becomes less meaningful. Even if Earth is reached again, the body that arrives carries the imprint of deep space. Medical systems on Earth may mitigate some effects, but they cannot restore what was lost. In this sense, radiation ensures that beyond Mars, return is never complete. Something is always left behind. What the absence of gravity does to the human body. Gravity is so constant in human life that it becomes invisible. From birth, every movement we make is shaped by it. Muscles develop by resisting it. Bones strengthen by carrying weight against it. Fluids settle, organs orient themselves, and balance systems calibrate around its steady pull. We do not experience gravity as a force acting upon us. We experience it as normality. Beyond Mars, that normality disappears not suddenly, but persistently, and with consequences that unfold over time. In microgravity, the human body enters a state it was never designed to inhabit. At first, the effects seem mild, even liberating. Weightlessness feels effortless. Movement requires little energy. Objects float, but beneath this apparent ease, the body begins to reorganize itself in ways that are fundamentally maladaptive for long-term survival. Systems that evolve to work under constant load begin to weaken when that load is removed. One of the earliest and most severe effects is bone loss. On Earth, bones are constantly being broken down and rebuilt in response to stress. This process maintains density and strength. In microgravity, stress disappears. Bones no longer need to support body weight, and the rebuilding process slows dramatically. Calcium leaches out of bone tissue and enters the bloodstream, weakening skeletal structures while increasing the risk of kidney stones. Over months and years, bones become porous and brittle, particularly in the hips, spine, and legs. The longer the exposure, the less reversible the damage becomes. Muscle loss follows a similar pattern. Muscles exist to counteract gravity. Without it, they are used less and deteriorate rapidly. Even with rigorous exercise routines, astronauts experience significant muscle atrophy during extended missions. Beyond Mars, where mission durations stretch far beyond current experience, maintaining muscle mass becomes increasingly difficult. Weakness is not just an inconvenience. It impairs the ability to perform repairs, respond to emergencies, and eventually tolerate gravity again, if gravity is ever encountered. The cardiovascular system also undergoes profound changes. On Earth, gravity pulls blood toward the lower body, and the heart works continuously to circulate it upward. In microgravity, fluids redistribute toward the head and chest. Faces appear puffy, legs thin. Over time, the heart muscle weakens because it no longer needs to work as hard. Blood volume decreases. When gravity is reintroduced, even briefly, the system struggles to adapt. Dizziness, fainting, and reduced endurance are common. After years without gravity, the body may no longer be capable of functioning normally in it. Vision is another unexpected casualty. Prolonged exposure to microgravity can alter pressure within the skull, flattening the back of the eyes and affecting optic nerves. Many astronauts report changes in vision that persist long after returning to Earth. The mechanisms are not fully understood, but the trend is clear. The absence of gravity disrupts delicate balances within the body in ways that are still being uncovered. Beyond Mars, where exposure would be far longer, these changes could become severe and permanent. The brain itself is not immune. Fluids shifting within the skull may affect cognition, balance, and sensory processing. Combined with radiation exposure, sleep disruption, and psychological stress, microgravity creates conditions where mental performance may degrade gradually. Decision-making, attention, and memory-critical functions for autonomous missions can be subtly compromised. In deep space, small cognitive declines can have disproportionate consequences. The immune system also weakens. Studies show that microgravity alters immune responses, making the body more susceptible to infection and less efficient at healing. Wounds may heal more slowly. Latent viruses can reactivate. In an isolated environment with limited medical resources, these changes introduce risks that are difficult to manage. Beyond Mars, medical evacuation is impossible. The body must cope with illness using what it has, and what it has is already compromised. Perhaps the most insidious aspect of microgravity is its interaction with time. Short missions allow for recovery. The body adapts back, imperfectly but effectively. Long missions blur the line between adaptation and damage. Systems recalibrate to the new environment, but that recalibration is optimized for weightlessness, not for life on a planetary surface. After years in microgravity, returning to gravity, if it happens at all, becomes a traumatic event rather than a relief. Artificial gravity is often proposed as a solution. Rotating habitats, centrifugal force, and other concepts could simulate gravity to some extent. These ideas are promising, but they introduce engineering challenges of their own. Large structures must rotate reliably for decades. Mechanical failures could be catastrophic. Partial gravity may not be sufficient to fully preserve health, and implementing such systems adds mass, complexity, and risk factors already in short supply beyond Mars. There is also a philosophical dimension to this transformation. The human body is not merely a vehicle for the mind. It shapes perception, emotion, and identity. As the body changes, so does the experience of self. Prolonged weightlessness alters posture, movement, and spatial awareness. Over time, Earth's normal gravity may begin to feel foreign, even hostile. The traveler adapts to space not as a visitor, but as a resident of an environment that no longer supports return. Beyond Mars, the absence of gravity ensures that even if a spacecraft could retrace its path home, the people aboard might not be physically capable of completing the journey back into Earth's environment. Landing, standing, walking actions taken for granted could become dangerous or impossible. Medical care on Earth might prolong life, but it would not restore the body to its original state. Return becomes not a reversal, but an arrival into a body that no longer belongs fully to Earth. This gradual transformation reinforces a pattern we have seen before. Deep space travel does not prevent return through a single barrier. It erodes it through accumulation. Physics narrows options. Distance delays support. Radiation damages silently. Microgravity reshapes the body itself. Each factor alone might be managed for a time. Together, they redefine what it means to leave and what it means to come back. Psychological point of no return. Long before the body fails, before systems degrade or fuel calculations turn unfavorable, something quieter begins to shift. It happens inside the mind. There is no clear moment when it starts, no single thought that marks the change. Instead, it unfolds gradually, shaped by isolation, autonomy, and time. Beyond Mars, the psychological environment becomes as demanding as the physical one, and in many ways, less forgiving. Human psychology evolved in constant relationship with others. Even solitude on Earth exists within a broader context. Society is nearby, communication is immediate, and help is conceptually available. In deep space, isolation is not a temporary condition. It is the default state. Crews are separated not only by distance, but by delay. Words spoken toward Earth arrive long after the emotional moment that prompted them has passed. Responses return, stripped of immediacy, their relevance dulled by time. Conversation becomes asynchronous, careful, and restrained. This delay changes how people express themselves. Emotional honesty becomes risky when clarification cannot arrive quickly. Conflicts linger unresolved. Misunderstandings stretch across hours or days. Over time, communication narrows to essentials. Technical updates replace personal expression. The emotional bandwidth between Earth and the spacecraft shrinks, not out of intention, but out of necessity. The crew's emotional world turns inward. Within the spacecraft, social dynamics intensify. Small groups carry enormous psychological weight. Every interaction is repeated. Every habit is magnified. Minor irritations, easily escaped on Earth, become persistent features of daily life. Privacy is scarce, silence is rare. And yet, loneliness persists not from the absence of people, but from the absence of new ones. The same faces, the same voices, the same rhythms repeat endlessly, reinforcing a sense of enclosure that no amount of professionalism can fully erase. Time behaves differently in isolation, without external cues changing seasons, social milestones, spontaneous events. The mind loses reference points. Days blur together. Weeks pass without distinction. The future feels distant and abstract, while the present becomes repetitive and heavy. Motivation shifts from aspiration to endurance. Goals are reframed not as achievements to be reached, but as durations to be survived. Autonomy compounds this strain. Beyond Mars, crews cannot rely on constant guidance. Decisions must be made locally, often without full information. Responsibility becomes absolute. Every choice carries weight, and every mistake feels personal. There is no immediate reassurance from experts, no collective validation. This level of responsibility can be empowering at first, but over time, it becomes exhausting. The mind carries a constant awareness that there is no backup, no safety net, no higher authority to defer to. The concept of Earth also changes psychologically. Early in the journey, Earth is present, visible, discussed, referenced. Over time, it becomes symbolic rather than experiential. News arrives late. Cultural shifts happen without the traveler's participation. Language evolves. Familiar references lose immediacy. Earth becomes less a place and more an idea, preserved in memory rather than lived reality. This transition is subtle, but profound. At a certain point, the idea of returning to Earth begins to feel less like going home and more like entering a foreign environment. The rhythms of Earth life, crowds, gravity, noise, unpredictability may feel overwhelming rather than comforting. The spacecraft, despite its limitations, becomes familiar, structured, and psychologically safe. This inversion marks a critical psychological threshold. Home is no longer where you came from, but where you are. Isolation also alters self-perception. Without the social feedback loops of Earth, identity becomes fluid, roles blur, achievements feel muted without witnesses. Failures feel heavier without external reassurance. Over time, the sense of self may narrow, defined increasingly by function rather than by relationship or aspiration. You are no longer who you were. You are what you must do to survive. Sleep patterns shift. Circadian rhythms struggle without natural day-night cycles. Artificial lighting and schedules help, but they cannot fully replicate the subtle cues of Earth. Chronic sleep disruption affects mood, cognition, and emotional regulation. Patience shortens. Emotional resilience thins. Small stressors feel larger. Recovery takes longer. These effects do not incapacitate suddenly. They erode steadily. The psychological point of no return is not marked by despair or breakdown. It is marked by adaptation. The mind adjusts to conditions that would once have seemed unbearable. It lowers expectations. It narrows focus. It finds stability within constraint. And in doing so, it quietly lets go of certain assumptions. Chief among them, the expectation of return. This adaptation is not failure. It is survival. But it carries consequences. When the mind commits fully to the present environment, the idea of leaving it becomes destabilizing. Plans to return may persist intellectually, but emotionally, they lose urgency. The journey back becomes hypothetical, something to be discussed rather than desired. At this stage, return is not prevented by distance or fuel, but by psychological realignment. Beyond Mars, the mind learns to live without immediacy, without variety, without reassurance. It becomes inward-facing, disciplined, and resilient in ways that are difficult to translate back into Earth life. Even if a physical return were possible, psychological reintegration would be uncertain. The traveler would arrive not just older and altered, but shaped by an environment that demands a different kind of human presence. Why spacecraft are designed to die? Every spacecraft ever built carries an unspoken assumption that it will not last forever. This is not a design flaw or a failure of imagination. It is a practical acknowledgement of limits. Spacecraft are engineered to endure for a defined period, under specific conditions, with carefully calculated tolerances. Beyond Mars, this reality becomes unavoidable. The machines that carry humans into deep space are not homes in the traditional sense. They are temporary shelters, moving through an environment that slowly dismantles everything placed within it. Space is hostile not through violence, but through persistence. Vacuum pulls at seals, temperature swings stress materials, radiation weakens electronics, micrometeoroids strike without warning. Each of these forces acts continuously, and each contributes to gradual degradation. Engineers account for this by building redundancy into critical systems, but redundancy itself is finite. Spare parts are limited. Backup systems rely on components that age alongside the primary ones. Over time, redundancy becomes a diminishing resource rather than a safeguard. Materials fatigue is one of the least visible yet most decisive factors. Metals expand and contract as spacecraft move between sunlight and shadow. Over years, these cycles create microfractures that propagate silently. Polymers become brittle, insulation degrades, lubricants evaporate or break down in vacuum. None of these changes are dramatic in isolation, but together they erode structural integrity. Beyond Mars, there is no dockyard, no dry dock, no facility capable of replacing major components. Repairs must be improvised, limited by tools, materials, and human endurance. Electronics face a similar fate. Modern spacecraft depend on complex computer systems to manage navigation, life support, power distribution, and communication. Radiation gradually corrupts memory, damages circuits, and increases the likelihood of failure. Shielding helps, but cannot eliminate exposure entirely. Error-correcting software mitigates some effects, but only within limits. As missions extend into decades, the probability of critical electronic failure approaches certainty not because of poor design, but because complexity itself cannot remain perfect indefinitely. Life support systems are especially vulnerable. They must function continuously, recycling air and water with minimal loss. Filters clog, pumps wear out, Sensors drift out of calibration. Biological systems used for recycling can become unstable. Small inefficiencies accumulate until margins vanish. On shorter missions, these systems are monitored closely and adjusted from Earth. Beyond Mars, adjustments must be made locally, often with incomplete information and limited spare parts. Each intervention carries risk. There is also a structural limitation embedded in spacecraft design philosophy. Spacecraft are optimized for launch constraints. They must fit within rockets, survive acceleration, and operate with minimal mass. This leads to designs that prioritize efficiency over robustness. On Earth, buildings are over-engineered because materials are abundant and repair is easy. In space, every kilogram matters. Components are designed to be just strong enough, just reliable enough, to meet mission requirements. Beyond Mars, where missions stretch far beyond original design lifetimes, this optimization becomes a liability. The concept of a self-sustaining spacecraft, a machine that can operate indefinitely without external support, remains largely theoretical. True sustainability requires the ability to fabricate replacement parts, recycle materials completely, and adapt systems to changing conditions. While research into in-space manufacturing and autonomous repair continues, current technology falls far short of this ideal. Beyond Mars, crews live inside machines that are aging alongside them, each dependent on the other for survival. This mutual dependency creates a psychological burden. The crew becomes acutely aware that their environment is slowly wearing out. Every unusual sound, every unexpected reading, every minor malfunction carries disproportionate weight. Vigilance becomes constant. Rest is incomplete. Over time, the awareness that the habitat itself has a lifespan erodes the sense of security needed for long-term well-being. Spacecraft are also isolated systems. There is no external ecosystem to absorb waste or provide redundancy. Every output must be managed internally. Heat must be radiated away. Carbon dioxide must be scrubbed. Waste must be stored or recycled. Any imbalance accumulates. On Earth, ecosystems buffer errors. In space, errors compound. Beyond Mars, this compounding effect unfolds over years, narrowing margins until survival depends on near-perfect operation. The inevitability of degradation reframes the idea of return. Even if propulsion and fuel were sufficient, the spacecraft itself may no longer be capable of supporting a return journey. Critical systems may be too fragile to withstand additional stress. Structural components may not tolerate further thermal cycling. Electronics may be operating on borrowed time. At this point, return is not just a question of where to go, but whether the vessel can safely make the attempt. There is a quiet acceptance built into long-duration mission planning that at some point, maintenance shifts from preservation to prolongation. The goal becomes extending functionality long enough to complete immediate objectives, not restoring the system to its original state. This shift mirrors the human experience of aging. Just as the body adapts to gradual decline, the spacecraft adapts to operating within narrowing limits. Both move forward together, aware that permanence is not an option. Beyond Mars, spacecraft are not meant to last forever, and neither are the assumptions that shape their design. They are bridges, not destinations, temporary answers to permanent questions. As their systems age and margins shrink, the option of return becomes increasingly theoretical. The machine that carried you outward may not be capable of carrying you back. Life support is a temporary lie. Life support is often spoken of as though it were a solved problem. Air is recycled. Water is purified. Food is stored, grown, or processed. As long as systems remain powered and maintained, life continues. This framing is comforting, and within limited durations, it is largely true. But beyond Mars, life support reveals its deeper nature not as a permanent solution, but as a temporary negotiation with entropy. On Earth, life support is invisible because it is planetary. Oxygen is replenished by forests and oceans. Water cycles endlessly through evaporation and rain. Waste is absorbed, broken down, and repurposed by ecosystems operating on scales far beyond human engineering. Spacecraft do not possess ecosystems. They possess machines, attempting to imitate fragments of one. These machines function remarkably well for a time, but they do not self-renew. They wear down, they drift out of balance, and they depend on components that cannot be fully replaced. Air recycling systems rely on filters, chemical reactions, and mechanical circulation. Over time, filters clog, sorbents lose efficiency, valves degrade, sensors drift. Small inaccuracies accumulate, and what was once clean air begins to change subtly in composition. Carbon dioxide levels may rise slightly, trace contaminants build up. These changes may remain below immediate danger thresholds, but they affect cognition, sleep quality, and overall health. Beyond Mars, where exposure is continuous and long-term, even small deviations matter. Water recycling follows a similar pattern. Spacecraft systems can reclaim a high percentage of water from humidity, waste, and condensation. But not all water is recovered. Losses occur through leaks, inefficiencies, and chemical binding. Over years, these losses add up. Water purification systems also degrade. Filters must be replaced. Microbial growth must be controlled. Contamination risks increase as components age. Eventually, water becomes a resource to be rationed rather than managed. Food presents an even greater challenge. Stored food degrades over time. Nutrients break down. Packaging fails. Palatability declines. Growing food in space offers partial solutions, but it introduces new complexities. Plants require light, water, nutrients, and careful environmental control. They are sensitive to radiation and microgravity. Crop failures can occur. Even successful harvests may not provide complete nutrition. Beyond Mars, food systems must function not just reliably, but monotonously, producing the same limited diet over years. Nutritional deficiencies can develop quietly, weakening the body's resilience. Waste management is often overlooked, yet it is central to life support. Waste must be stored, processed, or recycled without contaminating the environment. Systems handling waste are exposed to biological and chemical stress. They are prone to clogging, corrosion, and microbial imbalance. Failures in waste management do not merely create discomfort, they threaten air and water quality directly. Beyond Mars, repairing such failures becomes increasingly difficult as spare parts diminish. Life support systems also depend on energy. Every pump, filter, heater, and light requires power. Energy shortages ripple outward, forcing prioritization. Should air circulation be reduced to save power? Should water purification be slowed? Should food production lights be dimmed? Each decision carries health consequences that may not be immediately visible. Over time, these trade-offs accumulate into systemic stress. The phrase closed-loop life support suggests completeness, but no system is truly closed. Matter is lost. Efficiency declines. Biological systems drift. Engineers account for this by designing systems with margins extra capacity to absorb inefficiency. Beyond Mars, mission durations exceed the tested lifespan of these margins. Eventually, the system shifts from stable operation to managed decline. This reality reframes the idea of return. Life support is not something you turn off when you leave. It is something that must remain functional until you arrive. A return journey is not just a change in direction, it is an extension of exposure. Every additional day requires air, water, food, and waste processing. If life support systems are already operating near their limits, The act of returning may accelerate their failure rather than secure safety. There is also a psychological dimension to this fragility. Living inside a system that must be constantly monitored fosters vigilance, but also anxiety. Every unusual reading prompts concern. Every maintenance task feels urgent. Over time, the awareness that life depends on uninterrupted mechanical function erodes the sense of security. Beyond Mars, life is not supported by environment, but suspended by machinery. The temporary nature of life support also shapes mission planning. Designers must decide how much redundancy to include, how many spare parts to carry, how much mass to devote to consumables versus propulsion. These decisions are constrained by launch capabilities and cost. At some point, adding more life support reduces the ability to travel farther or return. Choices are made not because they are ideal, but because they are necessary compromises. When failures occur, they rarely announce themselves dramatically. A filter becomes slightly less effective. A pump vibrates a little more than usual. A sensor reading drifts. Each issue is manageable on its own. Together, they signal decline. Beyond Mars, decline does not mean immediate death. It means narrowing options. It means that certain plans, including return, become increasingly risky to attempt. In this sense, life support is a promise with an expiration date. It keeps humans alive long enough to accomplish specific goals, not indefinitely. It is designed for missions, not for open-ended existence. Beyond Mars, where time stretches beyond original assumptions, life support becomes one of the quiet forces that transforms exploration into endurance. As life support systems age and margins disappear, the idea of return must compete with the imperative of survival in the present. Sometimes, the safest choice is not to move, not to risk additional stress, but to remain where you are and manage what remains. In those moments, return is not prevented by distance or fuel, but by the simple fact that the systems keeping you alive may not survive the attempt. The economics no one talks about? When conversations turn to deep space travel, economics is often treated as an uncomfortable interruption, a practical concern intruding on a grand vision. We prefer to speak of ambition, destiny, and exploration, framing humanity's expansion into space as an inevitable progression. Yet beyond Mars, economics is not a background detail. It is a governing force, shaping what is planned, what is funded, and ultimately, what is abandoned. Return, more than any other aspect of deep space travel, is constrained not only by physics and biology, but by willingness to pay. On Earth, rescue and recovery are assumed responsibilities. When explorers are lost at sea or trapped in remote environments, nations mobilize resources because the cost is considered acceptable relative to the value placed on human life and public accountability. These efforts are expensive, but they occur within a shared infrastructure. Ships, aircraft, personnel, and communication networks already exist. Beyond Mars, no such infrastructure exists. Every element of rescue or return must be built from scratch, launched at enormous cost, and maintained across years or decades. The cost of launching mass into space remains extraordinarily high. Even with reusable rockets and technological advances, each kilogram represents fuel, engineering, risk, and time. Return capability is mass-intensive. It requires additional propulsion systems, fuel reserves, structural reinforcement, life support extensions, and redundancy. These elements do not contribute to exploration or scientific discovery directly. They exist solely to preserve an option that may never be exercised. From an economic perspective, return capability is an insurance policy with a premium measured in billions. Funding decisions are made within political systems that operate on short time horizons. Budgets are approved annually. Leadership changes every few years. Public interest shifts rapidly. A mission to travel beyond Mars may take decades from conception to completion. The people who approve its funding are unlikely to be the same people who bear responsibility if return proves impossible. This disconnect incentivizes optimism and discourages frank discussion of irreversible outcomes. There is also a disparity between public perception and financial reality. The public often assumes that if a mission is approved, all contingencies have been accounted for. In reality, deep space missions are exercises in prioritization. Trade-offs are inevitable. More fuel means less scientific payload. More life support means less propulsion. More redundancy means higher launch costs and longer development timelines. At some point, planners must decide which risks to accept. Return is one of the most expensive risks to mitigate. Private companies introduce additional dynamics. Commercial space enterprises operate under market pressures. Investments must promise returns, either financial or strategic. A mission designed with full return capability may be less attractive to investors than a one-way mission optimized for data collection or resource extraction. In such contexts, return becomes a liability rather than a feature. The absence of a clear revenue model for bringing people back from beyond Mars further weakens the case. There is also the question of opportunity cost. Resources devoted to preserving return could instead be used to support additional missions, develop new technologies, or address problems closer to home. Policymakers must weigh these choices. Beyond Mars, where costs escalate rapidly, the argument for allocating vast sums to ensure the return of a small number of individuals becomes politically fragile. Quietly, often without explicit acknowledgement, return shifts from being an expectation to being an aspiration. This shift is reinforced by precedent. Robotic missions are accepted as expendable. Space probes are designed to operate until they fail, with no expectation of recovery. Human missions blur this boundary, but they do not erase it. As distances increase, the distinction between human and robotic missions narrows economically. Both are expensive, risky, and isolated. The difference lies in ethical responsibility, not financial logic. Ethics, however, does not always dictate funding. Societies routinely accept risk in exchange for progress, especially when that risk is borne by volunteers. Beyond Mars, participation would likely be framed as a choice, a commitment made with full awareness of uncertainty. This framing subtly shifts responsibility away from institutions and toward individuals. If return proves impossible, it can be interpreted not as failure, but as the fulfillment of a known risk. Insurance markets offer another perspective. On Earth, high-risk activities are insurable because losses are bounded. In deep space, losses are not. The failure of a return mission would involve not only loss of life, but loss of hardware, data, and reputation. The scale of potential loss exceeds what any insurer can reasonably cover. Without insurance, financial risk becomes concentrated, further discouraging investment in robust return capability. As missions extend farther and last longer, the economic justification for maintaining return readiness weakens. Spare parts must be manufactured years in advance. Fuel must be launched and stored without degradation. Systems must be designed to operate far beyond their tested lifespans. Each requirement adds cost without adding immediate value. In an environment of finite resources, these costs are scrutinized relentlessly. Over time, economic realities shape narratives. Missions are described less as round trips and more as long-term presences. Language shifts subtly from return to resupply, from crew to settlers, from mission end to mission transition. These linguistic changes reflect deeper financial commitments. A permanent presence is easier to justify economically than a perpetual obligation to bring everyone back. Beyond Mars, economics does not forbid return outright. It makes it increasingly unattractive. The resources required to guarantee return grow faster than the willingness to allocate them. Decisions are deferred, contingencies are softened, and expectations are managed. By the time a mission is underway, return may exist only as a theoretical option, technically possible under ideal conditions, but unsupported by sustained investment. This quiet erosion of commitment is one of the least discussed yet most decisive factors in deep space travel. It does not generate dramatic failures or visible crises. It simply narrows choices until certain outcomes become more likely than others. In such an environment, return is not canceled, it is priced out. Rescue is a myth. Rescue is one of the most powerful ideas humans carry into dangerous environments. It exists not only as a practical possibility, but as a psychological anchor. Knowing that help can come, if not immediately, then eventually changes how risk is perceived. It allows courage to coexist with uncertainty. On Earth, rescue is so deeply embedded in our understanding of exploration that we rarely question its limits. Beyond Mars, that assumption quietly collapses. The concept of rescue depends on three conditions: awareness, speed, and access. Someone must know you are in trouble. They must be able to reach you in time. And they must be able to intervene effectively upon arrival. In deep space, each of these conditions erodes with distance. Communication delays mean awareness arrives late. Travel times stretch beyond survivable windows. Access is constrained by physics, fuel, and alignment. When any one of these fails, rescue shifts from an action to a story we tell ourselves. Even the earliest stage, knowing something is wrong, is compromised. Beyond Mars, spacecraft systems are complex, and not all failures announce themselves clearly. Sensors can fail silently, data can be corrupted. A situation may appear stable from a distance while deteriorating rapidly on board. By the time an anomaly is recognized on Earth, hours or days may have passed. Instructions sent in response arrive too late to prevent escalation. Rescue begins behind the clock, and the clock does not stop. Speed is the most unforgiving constraint. On Earth, rescue is measured in minutes or hours. In space beyond Mars, it is measured in months or years. No existing propulsion system allows rapid response across interplanetary distances. Even an immediately launched rescue mission would require precise alignment, enormous fuel expenditure, and sustained system reliability over long durations. The idea of rushing to the scene has no meaning when the scene itself is moving through space at tens of thousands of kilometers per hour. Access presents an even deeper challenge. Reaching a distressed spacecraft is not simply a matter of arriving nearby. Docking requires precise coordination, functioning systems on both vehicles, and stable conditions. A spacecraft in distress may be tumbling, leaking, or experiencing power loss. Its orbit or trajectory may be unstable. Attempting to dock could endanger both crews. Beyond Mars, where redundancy is limited and margins are thin, rescue attempts carry risks that may exceed those of the original emergency. There is also the question of sustainability. A rescue mission does not end when contact is made. Survivors must be supported, sheltered, and transported either onward or back. This requires additional life support, space, and resources. In deep space, every person rescued increases the burden on systems already operating near their limits. Rescue, in this context, risks transforming one crisis into a larger one. Historical experience reinforces this reality. Even near Earth, rescue in space has always been limited. Astronauts are trained to be self-reliant because immediate help is rarely available. The International Space Station relies on redundancy and careful planning, not rescue. Crews aboard the Apollo missions carried contingency plans that assumed isolation. These missions succeeded because they operated within a relatively small safety envelope. Beyond Mars, that envelope disappears. The myth of rescue persists because it is emotionally necessary. It allows institutions to frame missions as responsible and humane. It reassures participants and the public, but myths are sustained by repetition, not by evidence. When examined closely, rescue beyond Mars reveals itself as an aspiration unsupported by practical mechanisms. It exists in simulations and proposals, not in operational capability. This realization carries ethical weight. If rescue is not realistically possible, then missions must be framed differently. Risk disclosure becomes absolute. Responsibility shifts entirely to the individuals who depart. Institutions can no longer promise intervention. They can only promise preparation. This changes the moral landscape of exploration, transforming it from a shared societal endeavor into a deeply personal commitment. The absence of rescue also reshapes behavior. Crews become more conservative, prioritizing system stability over experimentation. Innovation slows, risk-taking diminishes. Survival becomes the overriding goal. In such an environment, the idea of return competes with the imperative to maintain equilibrium. Attempting to leave a stable, if constrained, situation to attempt a dangerous journey back may feel less rational than enduring where you are. Beyond Mars, rescue is not denied by cruelty or neglect. It is denied by scale. Distance, time, and physics conspire to render it impractical. This does not make exploration impossible, but it makes it final in a way that humans have rarely confronted. When you go far enough, you are not backed up by a larger system. You are the system. As this truth settles in, another transformation occurs. Earth-based decision-makers begin to plan missions under the assumption that crews must be self-sufficient not just for survival, but for resolution. Problems must be solved locally or not at all. Endings must be managed internally. Return becomes one possible outcome among many, not a guaranteed conclusion. The silence beyond human attention. Silence is not simply the absence of sound. In deep space, silence is the gradual withdrawal of attention. It arrives not all at once, but in stages, as distance stretches and relevance thins. Beyond Mars, the silence that shapes human fate is not cosmic, it is human. It is the quiet that settles when Earth looks elsewhere. At the beginning of any great mission, attention is intense. Engineers monitor every signal. News outlets follow every milestone. The public watches, launches, applauds achievements, and waits for updates. The mission exists within a shared narrative, supported by curiosity and pride. But attention is finite. As time passes and novelty fades, the spotlight moves on. New crises arise. New discoveries compete for space. The mission continues, but the world that sent it gradually forgets. This shift is subtle and rarely acknowledged. Funding remains, but scrutiny softens. Updates become routine. Anomalies that once would have prompted urgent investigation are logged, assessed, and deferred. The mission becomes stable enough to be boring, and boring enough to be distant. Beyond Mars, where communication delays already weaken emotional connection, this loss of immediacy accelerates. Silence changes priorities. When fewer people are watching, fewer resources are mobilized. Teams are reassigned. Expertise disperses. Institutional memory thins as staff rotate out and projects end. The people most familiar with the mission systems may no longer be present when problems arise. Knowledge becomes archived rather than lived. The mission remains operational, but the depth of engagement erodes. This erosion affects decision-making. On Earth, choices are shaped by political will and public visibility. High-profile missions attract rapid response. Low-profile ones are managed conservatively, sometimes cautiously, sometimes minimally. Beyond Mars, where delays mask urgency and outcomes feel abstract, decisions may favor stability over intervention. Risks are tolerated longer. Margins are allowed to narrow. Silence does not cause failure, but it permits it. For the crew, this shift is palpable. Messages from Earth become shorter, more procedural. Fewer questions are asked. Fewer voices are heard. Celebrations are muted or delayed. The sense of being part of a collective effort fades. The crew remains connected technically, but emotionally, the connection loosens. Earth feels less like a partner and more like a distant observer. This psychological distance reinforces earlier adaptations. The crew becomes more inward-focused, relying on internal rhythms rather than external validation. Earth's opinions carry less weight. Its expectations feel remote. The idea of returning to rejoin a society that has moved on begins to feel less compelling. Home becomes something that exists in memory rather than in anticipation. Silence also affects problem resolution. On Earth, complex challenges benefit from many minds. Diverse perspectives identify overlooked risks and creative solutions. Beyond Mars, communication delays and reduced attention narrow the pool of active problem solvers. Solutions are generated locally, constrained by available expertise and energy. This autonomy can be empowering, but it also increases the likelihood of blind spots. Silence amplifies the consequences of error by limiting feedback. The withdrawal of attention has ethical implications as well. Responsibility becomes diffuse. If a mission struggles, who is accountable? The agencies that initiated it may have changed leadership. The public may barely remember it exists. In this environment, return becomes less a promise and more a hope sustained by momentum rather than commitment. The silence does not announce abandonment. It simply allows it. There is a paradox here. The farther humans travel from Earth, the more they embody collective ambition. Yet the farther they go, the less collective support they can realistically expect. Attention, like gravity, weakens with distance. Beyond Mars, it thins to a whisper. This does not mean Earth is indifferent. It means Earth is busy. Silence also alters time perception. Without frequent interaction, the crew's timeline diverges from Earth's. Events that feel monumental on board may pass unnoticed below. Earth's milestones arrive late, stripped of context. The shared present fractures. When communication resumes, it bridges not just distance, but different lived realities. This makes reintegration emotional or physical more difficult. As silence deepens, so does self-reliance. The crew learns to operate without expectation of immediate recognition or support. This is a form of resilience, but it carries a cost. When people stop expecting help, they also stop planning around it. Return, which depends on sustained attention, coordination, and investment from Earth, becomes less central to daily life. Survival and continuity take precedence. Beyond Mars, silence becomes an environment in its own right. It shapes behavior, narrows options, and redefines success. The mission is no longer measured by public milestones, but by the quiet achievement of another day without failure. In such an environment, return is not abandoned consciously. It is deprioritized gradually. This is how journeys become permanent, without ever being declared so, not through dramatic decisions or official announcements, but through the slow accumulation of silence. Attention fades, resources thin, expectations adjust. The path back remains on paper, but the will to travel it dissolves into routine. Historical near disasters that almost proved this. History often appears orderly when viewed from a distance. Missions succeed, technologies advance, and humanity moves forward. But beneath this smooth surface lies a record of moments when return nearly failed, even when Earth was close, watching, and able to help. These moments matter, not because they ended in tragedy, but because they reveal how narrow the margins have always been. Beyond Mars, those margins do not widen, they disappear. Consider the early era of spaceflight, when missions were short and objectives modest. Even then, survival depended on a fragile chain of assumptions. A single malfunction could cascade into catastrophe. The difference between success and loss was often measured in improvisation and luck. The reason these stories are remembered as triumphs is precisely because return was possible barely. There was a mission where an explosion quietly crippled a spacecraft on its way to the moon, transforming a routine journey into a fight for survival. Engineers on Earth worked continuously, calculating trajectories by hand, repurposing systems never meant to support life, guiding astronauts through procedures under extreme stress. Communication was immediate enough to matter. The spacecraft was close enough to Earth's gravitational reach to be redirected, and even then, survival was uncertain until the final moments. This mission succeeded not because the system was robust, but because Earth was near. There were space stations where fires broke out, filling compartments with smoke in an environment where there is nowhere to run. There were depressurizations that turned entire modules into hazards within seconds. There were toxic leaks that required crews to seal themselves into survival capsules. In each case, disaster was avoided through proximity. Supplies could be replenished, crews could be rotated, damaged hardware could be replaced. Return remained an option because the station existed within Earth's logistical reach. Even the most advanced orbital platforms have not been immune to close calls. Power failures have left stations spinning silently in space. Computer malfunctions have threatened loss of control. Collisions with debris have punctured hulls. Each incident was resolved through a combination of redundancy, rapid response, and the knowledge that help was available. None of these conditions exist beyond Mars. Near disasters reveal another truth. Systems often fail in ways designers did not anticipate. Procedures are written for expected failures, not for novel combinations of faults. When something truly unexpected occurs, human creativity fills the gap. But creativity requires time, communication, and support. Beyond Mars, those resources are constrained. Novel failures become final ones. These incidents also highlight the role of human error, not as negligence, but as inevitability. Fatigue, stress, and misinterpretation have contributed to many near misses. On Earth or in low orbit, these errors are corrected through layers of oversight and feedback. Beyond Mars, oversight is delayed, and feedback arrives too late. The same human tendencies that have been survivable close to Earth become far more dangerous in isolation. Another pattern emerges when examining these historical moments. Return was often the only viable solution. When systems failed, the goal shifted from completing the mission to getting home. This fallback option shaped decision-making and risk tolerance. Knowing that return was possible allowed crews and controllers to take calculated risks. Beyond Mars, where return cannot be assumed, risk calculus changes entirely. There is no fallback, only endurance. It is also worth noting that many close calls were kept quiet at the time. Details emerged years later, once missions were celebrated and lessons could be shared without alarm. This creates a distorted public perception. Spaceflight appears safer than it is because its most dangerous moments are often invisible. Beyond Mars, invisibility compounds risk. Failures may occur without witnesses, without headlines, and without the possibility of intervention. These historical examples are sometimes cited as evidence of human ingenuity, and they are, but they are also evidence of dependence. Ingenuity was amplified by proximity to Earth's resources and attention. Remove that proximity, and ingenuity must operate alone, under harsher conditions, for longer durations. The margin for error shrinks accordingly. There is a temptation to believe that future technology will eliminate these risks. Better materials, smarter computers, more automation. These advances will help, but they will not change the fundamental pattern revealed by history. Complex systems fail in complex ways. Near Earth, those failures are survivable because they occur within a safety net. Beyond Mars, the net is gone. History does not argue against exploration. It argues for humility. It shows that even our greatest achievements have been fragile, balanced on narrow margins, and sustained by constant support. To imagine that these margins will expand as we move farther from Earth is to misunderstand their source. They exist because of Earth's presence, not despite it. As we carry these lessons forward, the question becomes not whether humans can survive beyond Mars for a time, but whether the conditions that have always allowed return can be recreated at scale and at distance. History suggests they cannot, not without transforming exploration into something fundamentally different from what it has ever been. Why AI won't save you. As missions push farther from Earth, a familiar promise emerges. Automation will close the gap. Artificial intelligence will monitor systems continuously, predict failures before they occur, manage life support, optimize trajectories, and guide crews through emergencies without hesitation or fatigue. In this vision, distance becomes less threatening because machines do not feel isolation, stress, or time. Beyond Mars, AI is often framed not as a tool, but as a solution. Yet this confidence rests on assumptions that deserve careful examination. Automation excels in stable, well-defined environments. It performs best when conditions match training data, when sensors are reliable, and when objectives are clear. Space, particularly beyond Mars, violates these assumptions regularly. Conditions drift, sensors degrade, unanticipated interactions arise between systems never meant to operate together for decades. In such environments, AI does not eliminate uncertainty, it inherits it. Artificial intelligence depends on data. The quality of its decisions reflects the quality of its inputs. Radiation damages sensors. Dust, wear, and thermal cycling alter readings. Subtle shifts accumulate until data no longer represents reality accurately. An AI system may continue to operate confidently, unaware that its model of the world has diverged from the world itself. This kind of failure is especially dangerous because it is quiet. Confidence persists, even as accuracy fades. There is also the problem of novelty. Many of the most serious failures in space history were unprecedented combinations of minor faults. They fell outside existing procedures and models. Humans survive by improvising, by reframing problems, by recognizing when assumptions no longer applied. AI systems are improving at pattern recognition, but they remain limited by prior experience. Beyond Mars, where missions encounter conditions no system has experienced before, novelty becomes the norm rather than the exception. Autonomy introduces another layer of risk. An AI entrusted with managing life support or navigation must be given authority to act. That authority includes the power to make irreversible decisions, venting compartments, rerouting power, shutting down systems. Errors in such decisions may not be immediately apparent, and by the time consequences emerge, reversal may be impossible. Trust in automation becomes a gamble between delegation and oversight. And beyond Mars, oversight is constrained. Maintenance poses additional challenges. AI systems require updates, recalibration, and validation. On Earth, software is patched continuously. Bugs are identified by large user communities. In deep space, updates must be transmitted across vast distances, tested under conditions that cannot be fully replicated, and deployed without disrupting critical operations. Errors introduced through updates may be as dangerous as the problems they aim to solve. Over time, software ages alongside hardware, accumulating technical debt. There is also a psychological cost to reliance on automation. When systems operate smoothly, human skills atrophy, manual procedures become unfamiliar, situational awareness diminishes. In emergencies, crews may be forced to intervene in systems they no longer fully understand. Training can mitigate this effect, but training itself requires time, energy, and focus resources already strained in long-duration missions. AI is often imagined as a neutral guardian, but it reflects human priorities and assumptions. Decisions about what to optimize, efficiency versus safety, speed versus redundancy, are encoded by designers. Beyond Mars, these priorities may conflict in unexpected ways. An AI optimized for mission completion might make choices that preserve systems at the expense of crew comfort or long-term health. Aligning machine objectives with human values becomes more complex when communication with designers is delayed or absent. Crucially, AI does not solve the problem of return. It may help manage systems more efficiently, but it cannot generate fuel, reverse radiation damage, or restore degraded materials. It can delay failure, but not eliminate it. In some cases, automation may even encourage riskier mission profiles by creating an illusion of control. Confidence in AI can lead planners to accept thinner margins, assuming that intelligence will compensate for fragility. History offers cautionary lessons here as well. Automated systems have failed in aviation, medicine, and industry, often in ways that surprised their creators. These failures were survivable because humans were present to intervene and because environments allowed recovery. Beyond Mars, recovery options are limited. A single misjudgment by an autonomous system may have consequences that unfold slowly and cannot be undone. This is not an argument against AI. Automation will be indispensable in deep space. It will extend human capability, reduce workload, and manage complexity beyond what unaided humans could handle. But it is not a savior. It is another system subject to degradation, uncertainty, and misalignment. Treating it as a guarantee rather than a tool introduces new vulnerabilities rather than removing old ones. Beyond Mars, survival depends on layered resilience, not singular solutions. AI may be one layer, but it cannot replace redundancy, human judgment, or the environmental support that Earth provides naturally. When these elements erode, no amount of intelligence can recreate them fully. Human biology was never meant for this. Long before rockets, before tools, before language itself, the human body was shaped by a very specific place. Gravity pulled downward with constant insistence. Sunlight arrived in predictable cycles. Air carried oxygen at stable pressure. Food, water, and microorganisms co-evolved with us in a shared system. Every cell in the human body carries the memory of this environment, encoded not as knowledge, but as expectation. Beyond Mars, those expectations are quietly violated every day. Biology adapts, but only within limits. Evolution works slowly, across generations, guided by survival and reproduction within a stable context. Space offers neither stability nor continuity. The human body entering deep space does not evolve, it endures. And endurance is not the same as suitability. Many of the challenges already discussed, radiation, microgravity, isolation, are often treated as separate problems. In reality, they converge within a single organism that must cope with all of them simultaneously. Radiation damages cells, microgravity weakens structure, isolation alters neurochemistry, limited nutrition constrains repair. Each stressor amplifies the others. The body is not facing one extreme, but many, all at once, without relief. One of the most fundamental biological assumptions humans carry is pressure. On Earth, air presses against the body constantly. Cells regulate gas exchange based on this pressure. Blood carries oxygen efficiently because partial pressures are stable. In space, pressure is artificial and tightly controlled. but even small deviations can have consequences. Lower pressures increase the risk of decompression sickness. Higher pressures increase fire risk. The balance is delicate, and long-term exposure to artificial atmospheres may have effects that are still poorly understood. Another assumption is microbial balance. The human body is not a single organism, but an ecosystem. Trillions of microorganisms live within us, aiding digestion, regulating immunity, and influencing mood. These microbial communities evolved under Earth conditions. In space, they change. Studies show shifts in gut bacteria during spaceflight, some of which may contribute to immune dysfunction and inflammation. Over long durations, these shifts may destabilize systems that rely on microbial cooperation. Beyond Mars, there is no easy way to restore balance. Healing itself becomes uncertain. On Earth, injuries trigger predictable repair responses. Cells divide, tissues rebuild. In microgravity and under radiation stress, these processes slow or malfunction. Wounds may heal incompletely. Infections may persist longer. Medical interventions are limited by available equipment, medication, shelf life, and diagnostic capability. Surgery in deep space is not impossible, but it is fraught with risk and complexity. Beyond Mars, the body must rely increasingly on its own diminishing capacity to recover. Reproduction, often discussed in speculative terms, reveals the deepest biological incompatibility. Human reproduction assumes gravity, radiation shielding, stable nutrition, and long-term safety. We do not know how human embryos develop under prolonged microgravity and radiation exposure. Animal studies suggest increased risk of mutation, developmental abnormalities, and failure. This uncertainty places a hard boundary on the idea of sustainable human presence beyond Earth. Without reliable reproduction, there is no biological continuity, only extended survival of individuals. Aging accelerates under stress, telomeres shorten, inflammation increases, cellular repair mechanisms degrade. While some spaceflight studies have revealed surprising short-term changes, long-term trends point toward increased biological strain. Beyond Mars, time itself becomes a biological adversary. The longer the exposure, the more the body diverges from its Earth-adapted baseline. At some point, return is not just difficult, it is physiologically traumatic. There is also a neurological dimension. The brain evolved in constant interaction with gravity, social complexity, and sensory richness. In deep space, sensory input narrows, visual horizons are limited. Sounds are repetitive, touch is constrained. Over time, this sensory deprivation can alter perception, mood, and cognitive flexibility. The brain adapts by simplifying. While this may aid short-term coping, it reduces resilience to change, particularly the change required to reintegrate into Earth's chaotic sensory environment. Technology can compensate for some biological limitations. Exercise devices slow muscle loss. Pharmaceuticals reduce certain risks. Artificial lighting regulates circadian rhythms. But compensation is not replacement. These measures slow decline. They do not restore normality. Each adds complexity and dependency. Each introduces potential failure points. Beyond Mars, the body becomes increasingly reliant on interventions simply to remain functional. This leads to a difficult truth. The farther humans travel from Earth, the more they must accept that survival does not imply compatibility. You can remain alive in an environment without being meant for it. The body can persist while slowly losing the qualities that made return meaningful. Strength, endurance, adaptability. These fade not dramatically, but steadily. Evolution has no interest in return journeys. It optimizes for presence, not for reversibility. The human body, shaped by Earth, carries that bias with it. Beyond Mars, biology does not forbid travel. It simply offers no assurance that the traveler can come back whole. one-way missions are already planned. The idea of a one-way mission often sounds radical, even cruel. It evokes images of abandonment, sacrifice, and finality. In public conversations, it is usually framed as a distant possibility, something that might be considered far in the future, once technology has matured and humanity has resolved its ethical doubts. Yet, beneath this public hesitation, a quieter reality exists. One-way missions are not hypothetical. They are already being planned, discussed, and in some cases, implicitly assumed. This reality emerges not from malice, but from convergence. Physics limits return. Biology degrades with time. Economics resists indefinite investment. Silence withdraws attention. When these forces align, permanence becomes the most practical option, not because it is ideal, but because it simplifies an otherwise unsolvable problem. If return is removed from the equation, designs become lighter, missions become cheaper, timelines become more flexible, and expectations become clearer. Historically, one-way journeys are not new. Throughout human history, people have boarded ships knowing they would never return. Colonists crossed oceans without return tickets. Explorers settled lands they would never leave. These journeys were framed as beginnings, not endings. The difference in space is not the commitment itself, but the environment. Earth's frontiers were still Earth. Space is not. Modern mission architectures increasingly reflect this shift. Concepts for deep space habitats, asteroid stations, and distant outposts emphasize long-term survival rather than round-trip capability. Designs focus on durability, recycling, and local resource use. Return vehicles, if included at all, are often theoretical add-ons rather than integrated systems. The message is subtle but consistent. Staying is easier than leaving. Language adapts to this reality. Mission duration becomes mission phase. Crew rotation becomes crew continuity. Return window becomes optional trajectory. These terms do not declare finality, but they soften expectations. They create psychological space for permanence, without forcing an explicit acknowledgement. One-way missions emerge, not as a decision, but as a default. Ethically, this shift is complex. Consent becomes central. Participants must understand not just the risks, but the likelihood that return may never occur. This understanding changes the nature of participation. Travelers are no longer explorers expecting reunion. They are emigrants leaving one world for another, without assurance of return. The moral responsibility of institutions shifts accordingly, from guaranteeing safety to ensuring clarity. Public acceptance of this idea is often underestimated. Humans are capable of embracing sacrifice when it is framed as meaningful. Legacy, purpose, and contribution can outweigh personal survival in certain narratives. Space agencies and private companies understand this. They do not need to promise return if they can promise significance. The absence of return becomes part of the mission's gravity. This framing also resolves logistical contradictions. If a mission is one way, life support can be optimized for habitation rather than travel. Propulsion can be simplified. Fuel reserves can be reduced. Risk tolerance changes. The mission no longer carries the burden of preserving a future option that drains present resources. Permanence becomes efficient. There is, however, a psychological cost to this efficiency. Knowing that a journey has no guaranteed return reshapes motivation and identity. Travelers must reconcile with separation not as a possibility, but as a certainty. Earth becomes a place left behind, not temporarily, but permanently. This demands a form of acceptance that goes beyond bravery. It requires redefinition of self, purpose, and belonging. Quietly, this acceptance is already being cultivated. Training emphasizes autonomy and resilience. Narratives highlight contribution over survival. Discussions of return are couched in probabilities rather than promises. The groundwork is being laid not for abandonment, but for a different kind of human presence, one that does not expect to come home. One-way missions do not announce themselves with declarations. They emerge through design choices, budget decisions, and narrative shifts. They become normal not because they are desirable, but because they are workable. Beyond Mars, workability matters more than tradition. In the next chapter, we will examine what happens at the most intimate level of all, the moment when Earth stops feeling like home and becomes instead a memory carried across an unbridgeable distance. The moment Earth becomes a memory. There is no ceremony when Earth stops feeling like home. No announcement, no clear dividing line between before and after. The transition happens quietly, carried by repetition and distance, until one day the realization surfaces almost accidentally. The place you came from no longer feels like the place you belong to. Beyond Mars, this moment arrives not through loss, but through adaptation. At first, Earth remains vivid. Its image is present in conversations, in transmitted photographs, in recorded voices. Travelers mark time by events unfolding, their holidays, anniversaries, familiar rhythms of life, continuing without them. Earth feels distant, but present, like a city glimpsed from across a wide river. The assumption of return gives these memories weight. They are preserved for later, held in suspension. As months stretch into years, that suspension becomes difficult to maintain. Earth changes. New references appear. Old ones fade. Cultural touchstones shift. Language evolves subtly, shaped by events the traveler did not experience directly. News arrives delayed and fragmented, stripped of context. Emotional reactions come too late to matter. The shared present fractures, replaced by parallel timelines that no longer intersect cleanly. Memory begins to do what it always does. When unsupported by experience, it simplifies. Details blur, edges soften. What remains is not the complexity of Earth, but an idealized version of it, compressed, curated, and static. Earth becomes a place frozen in time, preserved as it was when the journey began. This preservation is comforting at first. Later, it becomes disorienting. The present, meanwhile, is shaped entirely by the environment of the mission. Daily routines revolve around maintenance, monitoring, and survival. Social interactions are limited to a small group. Sensory input is narrow and repetitive. Over time, the mind adapts to these constraints. What once felt restrictive becomes familiar. What once felt foreign becomes normal. The spacecraft, or habitat, becomes the reference point against which all experience is measured. This adaptation is subtle, but it carries a profound consequence. When Earth exists primarily as memory, the emotional pull to return weakens, not because Earth is forgotten, but because it no longer aligns with lived reality. Returning would mean stepping into a world that has moved on, into relationships reshaped by absence, into a body altered by years away from gravity and atmosphere. The imagined reunion grows increasingly abstract. There is also a protective element to this shift. Holding on to longing indefinitely is exhausting. The mind reduces pain by lowering expectation. By accepting permanence, even implicitly, travelers find stability. Earth becomes a chapter rather than a destination. This reframing allows focus on the present, on what can still be influenced and controlled. It is not resignation, it is psychological survival. Photographs and recordings play a complex role here. They preserve connection, but they also highlight distance. Each image reinforces the fact that the traveler is no longer part of that world's unfolding. Watching life continue without you can be comforting, but it can also deepen separation. Over time, engagement with these reminders may decrease not out of indifference, but out of self-preservation. The concept of home shifts accordingly. Home becomes defined by immediacy rather than origin. It is where your actions matter now, where your presence has consequence, where your routines make sense. Beyond Mars, home may be a small volume of pressurized space, shared with a handful of others, sustained by systems you understand intimately. It may be fragile, but it is present. Earth is stable, but distant. This inversion challenges deeply held assumptions. We are taught that home is fixed, that leaving is temporary, that return restores belonging. Deep space travel undermines this narrative. It reveals that belonging is dynamic, shaped by context and continuity. When continuity breaks, belonging relocates. There is also a generational dimension to this transformation. If missions extend long enough, new people may arrive who have never experienced Earth directly. Their connection to it is entirely mediated stories, images, and data. For them, Earth is not home at all, but heritage. The idea of return becomes even less relevant, replaced by curiosity rather than longing. At this stage, return is no longer prevented by external barriers. It is prevented by internal realignment. The traveler has become someone else, shaped by a different environment, oriented toward a different future. Returning to Earth would not be a restoration, but a second displacement, another severing from a place that now feels like home. This does not mean Earth loses significance. It remains a source of identity, history, and meaning. But it is no longer central to daily existence. It becomes a reference point rather than a destination. The journey outward has already transformed into a journey away. In this sense, the moment Earth becomes a memory is not tragic, it is inevitable. It marks the point where exploration completes its psychological arc, not when a destination is reached, but when the idea of return quietly dissolves into remembrance. Death without drama. When people imagine death in deep space, they often picture catastrophe, explosions, alarms, flashing lights, sudden silence. These images come from films and stories that rely on spectacle to convey danger. Reality, however, is rarely so dramatic. Beyond Mars, death would most often arrive quietly, without ceremony, as the final outcome of gradual processes that have been unfolding for years. In an environment where margins are thin and systems are aging, most failures do not announce themselves loudly. A component degrades, a sensor drifts, a biological system weakens. None of these events are fatal on their own. They accumulate. Eventually, a threshold is crossed, and recovery is no longer possible. The end comes not as a surprise, but as a realization. Medical emergencies illustrate this clearly. A heart rhythm irregularity, an infection, a stroke on Earth. These events trigger rapid intervention. Specialists are consulted, equipment is deployed. Time is compressed in service of survival. Beyond Mars, time expands. Diagnosis is limited. Treatment options are constrained by what is available on board. Even when the cause is understood, there may be nothing to do but manage symptoms and wait. Death becomes a process rather than an event. Radiation-related illnesses follow a similar pattern. Cancers develop slowly. Neurological decline progresses subtly. The body compensates until it cannot. By the time symptoms become undeniable, intervention is limited. There is no emergency response for cumulative damage. The illness has been unfolding silently for years, and it ends without spectacle. Mechanical failures, too, tend toward quiet finality. Life support systems do not typically fail all at once. Efficiency declines. Backup systems engage. Power is rerouted. Each step buys time but consumes margin. Eventually, the system reaches a state where further adjustment is impossible. Air quality degrades beyond safe limits. Temperature control falters. Consciousness fades not in panic, but in exhaustion. Even accidents would likely lack drama. A fall in microgravity does not break bones the way it does on Earth. but tools can become lethal projectiles. A small puncture may be contained for hours before pressure loss becomes critical. Fires, while dangerous, may smolder rather than rage. Each scenario unfolds slowly enough to be managed until it is not. The absence of drama does not make these endings less significant. It makes them more human. Death without spectacle forces confrontation with vulnerability rather than heroism. There are no final acts of bravery witnessed by millions, no last-minute rescues, no triumphant returns. There is only the quiet recognition that the journey has reached its natural conclusion. This reality influences behavior long before the end arrives. Crews plan for decline. They establish protocols for care, for comfort, for dignity. They discuss what it means to die far from Earth, without burial or ceremony. These conversations are practical, not morbid. They are part of acknowledging permanence. The handling of remains presents its own challenges. Spacecraft are closed systems. Resources are finite. Cultural practices surrounding death must be adapted to constraints that allow little room for tradition. Decisions are made not out of disrespect, but necessity. Even in death, the environment dictates terms. There is also the question of witness. On Earth, death is shared by family, by community, by ritual. Beyond Mars, it is intimate. A small group bears the emotional weight. Earth learns of the loss later, through delayed messages that lack immediacy. Grief is asynchronous. Closure is partial. In this context, return loses much of its symbolic power. There is no body to bring home, no funeral to attend, no collective mourning in real time. The journey ends where it happens. The meaning of the life lived there is defined by presence, not by reunion. Understanding this is not meant to diminish exploration. It is meant to clarify its cost. Deep space travel strips away illusions, including the illusion that every story needs a dramatic ending. Some stories conclude quietly, sustained not by spectacle, but by endurance. Why? Colonies don't change the outcome. The idea of a colony carries comfort with it. It suggests permanence, stability, and continuity. When people imagine human presence beyond Mars, they often picture domes beneath alien skies, self-sustaining habitats, generations born far from Earth but still connected to it. Colonies imply success. They imply that the journey outward has been resolved, that survival has transitioned into civilization. Yet this image quietly obscures a harder truth. Building a place to stay does not automatically create a way back. Colonies change the shape of human presence, but they do not change the environment in which that presence exists. The same forces that limit return for travelers, distance, radiation, biology, economics, continue to operate, often more intensely. A permanent settlement may reduce certain risks by stabilizing daily life, but it amplifies others by extending exposure indefinitely. Time, which erodes bodies and systems, becomes the colony's constant companion. Infrastructure does not equal resilience. A colony requires complex systems to maintain air, water, food, power, and temperature. These systems must operate continuously, without interruption, across years or decades. They must survive radiation, micrometeoroid impacts, and material fatigue. They must be repaired with locally available resources, or not at all. While a colony may have more space and redundancy than a spacecraft, it also has more points of failure. Complexity grows faster than reliability. The promise of in situ resource utilization using local materials to support life offers partial relief. Water can be extracted from ice. Minerals can be processed. Fuel may be synthesized. These capabilities reduce dependence on Earth, but they do not eliminate vulnerability. Every process requires energy, equipment, and expertise. Failures propagate through the system. A disruption in power affects life support. A breakdown in processing affects food and fuel. Independence introduces fragility alongside autonomy. Biology does not reset simply because walls are thicker or gravity is simulated imperfectly. Radiation exposure continues. Microbial ecosystems remain artificial. Human bodies still age under stress. Children born in such environments would face unknown developmental challenges. A colony does not recreate Earth, it approximates it imperfectly, at great cost. Over generations, these imperfections accumulate. Economically, colonies intensify the logic of permanence. Once resources are invested in building and maintaining a settlement, incentives shift away from return. Launching people back to Earth becomes an expense without clear benefit. Skills are needed locally. Labor is scarce. The colony's survival depends on retaining its population. Return is no longer encouraged. It becomes disruptive. Psychologically, colonies accelerate the shift already seen in long missions. Home becomes where life unfolds, not where it began. Earth recedes into myth, heritage, or abstraction. For those born beyond Mars, return to Earth would not feel like going home. It would feel like immigration to an alien world. The emotional pull that once justified return dissolves across generations. There is also the issue of capability. Even if a colony wished to maintain a return pathway, doing so would require preserving launch infrastructure, fuel production, vehicle maintenance, and medical readiness indefinitely. These systems would compete with survival needs for resources and attention. In times of scarcity, return capability would be the first to be deferred. Over time, deferral becomes abandonment. Colonies do not solve the problem of return because return is not primarily a problem of settlement. It is a problem of scale. Earth is not just far away. It exists in a different protective context. A colony does not bring Earth closer. It merely makes distance livable for longer. The gulf remains. In this way, colonies complete the transformation that travel begins. They formalize permanence without declaring it. They make staying rational and leaving impractical. The path back may remain in theory, but in practice it fades through disuse. Beyond Mars, colonies do not represent a bridge between worlds. They represent a fork. One path leads outward toward adaptation and endurance. The other leads back toward Earth, requiring resources, will, and biology that may no longer be available. Most who stand at that fork will not choose the harder path. The final truth. When all the layers are set aside, when ambition is stripped of romance, when technology is separated from hope, when courage is no longer asked to compensate for physics, one truth remains. Traveling beyond Mars is not simply going farther, it is crossing a boundary after which the idea of return no longer governs reality. Not because of a single failure, not because of one unsolvable problem, but because every system that once made return normal begins to weaken at the same time. Physics does not forbid coming back. It simply demands more energy than can be carried without sacrifice. Biology does not collapse immediately. It slowly reshapes the body into something less compatible with Earth. Psychology does not break. It adapts, letting go of expectations that cause pain. Economics does not make declarations. It reallocates resources until certain options quietly disappear. Time does not threaten. It accumulates, patiently eroding margins. Each of these forces alone might be managed. Together, they converge, and convergence is what changes the nature of the journey. Human exploration has always depended on reversibility. Even the most dangerous expeditions retain the possibility of retreat. This possibility shaped risk, culture, and meaning. Beyond Mars, reversibility fades. What replaces it is not doom, but permanence. The journey outward becomes a commitment rather than an experiment. Presence replaces passage. Survival replaces return. This does not make such journeys wrong. It makes them different. The language we use matters here. We speak of missions as if there is an endpoint. We speak of crews as if rotation is expected. We speak of return as if it is a promise rather than a probability. These words persist because they are familiar, not because they are accurate. Beyond Mars, accuracy demands new language, language that acknowledges departure without framing it as loss. There will be people who choose this knowingly, not out of desperation, but out of clarity. They will understand that their lives will unfold away from Earth, shaped by environments that demand adaptation rather than nostalgia. They will not expect rescue. They will not rely on return. Their measure of success will be continuity, not reunion. For those who remain on Earth, this truth is uncomfortable. It challenges the belief that humanity expands without severing ties. It asks whether progress must always preserve connection. It forces us to confront the idea that some frontiers do not lead back to where we started. In time, this understanding may mature into honesty. Missions will be described not as journeys outward and back, but as transitions. Participation will be framed not as travel, but as emigration. The ethics of consent will sharpen, the narratives will slow, and the silence around finality may finally lift. Beyond Mars, space does not demand heroism. It demands acceptance. Acceptance that some paths lead away rather than outward. Acceptance that survival does not always include return. Acceptance that humanity's presence in the universe may not look like exploration forever, but like dispersion, quiet, deliberate, irreversible. The final truth is not that anyone who travels beyond Mars will never come back. The final truth is that once we go far enough, coming back is no longer the point. And in that realization, a different kind of future begins.